Welcome to the Nonprofits. Each week we scour the internet searching for proof of deities and the supernatural. We haven't found any yet that convinced us of the existence of any God, but we're still looking. And right now, we're here to tell you what we have found. So buckle up because the show is starting right now. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Nonprofits, the show where we discuss news and topics of the day from a skeptical humanist perspective. My name is Kelley Laughlin, and today's topics are actually a lot brighter than the ones that we usually discuss here. So I am here with our great panel. I'm going to start all the way down on the other end there with Jason Friedman. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hey, Kelley, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome. It's always fun to have you on the show with me. I always enjoy your company.
Oh, same, man. Same.
Yeah, cool. And next to him, the heavenly Helen Greene. Hi, Helen.
Hello, Kelley. Thank you for having me back. I'm happy to be here again.
No, it's not my deal. If it was, you wouldn't be there. So.
That's true. Yeah, I know. I just forced myself upon you. Hang out with me.
And next we have Jordan, the Reason to Doubt. And it's really great to have you back. I really enjoyed working with you the first time. So
yeah, it was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. I always love meeting new people. This show is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And today we are going to start out with shit internet apologists say, T's and P's for indicted 45. The SCOTUS turns a deaf ear to a traveling preacher. The Bible may be banned in Davis County. And why fast during holy days? Really, why do people fast? As with all of our shows, links to today's topics and the news we discuss are available in the description below. And if you want to come into the show prepared, you can go check out the Nonprofits Facebook fan page every Friday night for a complete list of the articles ahead of time. So with all of that being said, I see that Jordan's going to take us away into the first segment, which is Shit Internet Apologists Say.
Internet Apologists Say.
So history was made recently when former President Donald Trump was charged with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. That makes him the first president ever to have been charged with a crime. The records allege that he falsified records mainly around covering up hush payments to keep news from breaking that might have damaged his campaign. Now, the responses to this have fallen mostly on partisan lines, but I think the response to the religious right has been particularly interesting. So an example of that would be Franklin Graham. He's a famous apologist, and he posted that the left in Washington and across the country just can't get their fill of attacking Donald Trump. They're so paranoid of him. The onslaught is continual. And he goes on in that vein, basically asking people to pray for the president and making it clear that, in his opinion, this is purely a political hit job, essentially. What is interesting to me is seeing just how far the moral high ground is being sacrificed in order to support their chosen candidate. And also things that are being said, like, if they can go after Trump, they can go after you. Well, yeah, if I committed a crime, they certainly could go after me, because that's how laws work, right? Obviously, Trump is innocent until proven guilty, but that's just how the justice system works. So really not sure what they're getting at. But Helen, what do you think about all this?
Well, I have to appreciate the Twitter sometime, because somebody's Twitter comment on this particular story was, I thought was apropos. Basically, someone said, it's a remake of A Wonderful Life, but the entire town is praying to God to help Donald cover up his hush money payments to a porn star, and his guardian angel is Roy Coyne. So I really thought that was great, because, again, I keep thinking that I don't know why evangelicals are propping this gentleman up, and they've been doing it for years. Because to me, you've been preaching family values, divorce is bad, sanctity of marriage, and there's also this thing in the Bible about rich people and camels and eyes of needles, remember that type of thing? So a little bit, I'm kind of mentally exhausted from it. And I'm really tired of trying to do these mental gymnastics and trying to make people, not just Trump, but people like him, fit into their mold of what they preach.
Mhm.
And it's just like, it's very frustrating because they're still doing it. Like, does anyone remember the insurrection? Like, did we just forget about that? And then Franklin Graham's over here praying, saying that he needs to be protected. And I have to ask, like, maybe he should do some reflecting. I'm just saying, like, a little bit of reflecting, maybe a little bit of like, sit back, maybe reassess your worldview and the way that you talk about things. It might be a good idea. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about this. I mean, this kind of feels like a David Lynch movie meets like a Salvador Dali painting kind of slammed in together. It just doesn't. It makes no sense. It's so absurd. And what I'm really having a hard time understanding is how people like Franklin Graham, they still have platforms. This is the second time that I've had the honor of talking about that guy on the nonprofits, and it feels like 2 times too many. Why should anybody care about what his political leaning opinions? What does he have to say about anything? What are his qualifications that give any weight for his stupid statements? I'm sick of these people getting platformed. It's filth that spews out of people like Franklin Graham's mouth. Excuse me. And it's nothing but harmful and absurd. He's a representative, though, of a group of people who deny science and in its place erect idols of faith. And I think that's where you have that you're kind of looking for that bridge, that gaps, the group of people who support Trump and support Graham, and they all kind of support each other. They're yelling the same memes. They're spouting off the same Facebook nonsense. And you have like there's a what's the term? It's a intersectionality there that you can't deny, right? I think I don't know. I think it's really backwards and it's really deeply concerning. You have you have people who are extremely self-serving and they're able to use Christianity to hide in plain sight. We've seen this with some of the most prolific serial killers. We see this with people who embezzle millions of dollars and who we've talked about this on here before. They use this whole faith thing and Christianity to like automatically be considered good. It's like you're up to bat, but then you already get a base hit. Like you don't even have to make any effort and you're already on base. Kelley, you look like your brain's going over there, man. What do you think about what I'm saying?
I'm laughing because my brain's hardly ever going.
Well, I know. Yeah, that's why. That's all it happened.
It's really not too difficult for me at all to believe that Graham would come out and say these things. Honestly, I mean, he's come out in full support of Trump from the beginning, so it's nothing new. Didn't surprise me. I didn't know what else to say to that effect. There are plenty of other evangelists out there doing the same thing. I think we could all name a few: Greg Locke, Kenneth Copeland, Robin Bullock. He's my favorite. Hank Kunneman. The list goes on. What surprises me is that it's so hard, and this is why I think they're still supporting these guys or supporting Trump. Is it's so hard for so many people to admit that they were so wrong for so long.
Yeah,
and God told them to be so wrong for so long. So they have to stick with it. They have to hopefully are going to be justified on the other end of it at some point. But the more time goes on, the less that chance is going to happen is going away. I mean, it's just going away. They're not going to be vindicated. And I don't know why they're still riding that train. I really don't. But that's why I think they're still supporting Trump, because it's just self-delusion. Jordan, what do you have to say?
Well, I think it's definitely that it's hard for a lot of people to admit when they were wrong about something, especially when it's tied up with their identity. But I also think that it's just plain tribalism. It shows what anybody who's been watching could have seen for a long time, is that this moralizing that often happens is nothing more than a smokescreen. Like when they talk about drag queens having story hour as if like that's crumbling the fabric of our society, but if the president, if it ends up that he did what he's accused of, he pays hush money to a porn star to cover up an affair, and that's
Mhm.
totally fine. It's
Yeah.
like, pick a standard, right? But
Yeah.
it's not about actually holding to the rules that they proclaim. It's about picking the rules that fit the picture of society they want to build. And
Mhm.
this rule is okay because it's their guy, and that's all it boils down to.
No, I agree. There's a one of my favorite areas of study in psychology is cognitive dissonance. Easily one of my favorite things. And you discussed the tribalism thing. So there's a groupthink component to it. But there's also this thing, it's like you have the irrevocability of the decision. You have this idea that you've already put so much into something that you more or less you have to double down, and it's a really shame, because if you're able to show somebody their hypocrisy, and you make them confront their hypocrisy, either A, they're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's good, thank you. But if there's, like you brought up, the identity thing, man, that's crucial. People's beliefs are so wrapped up into their identity, and I know people say it's separate, but it's real hard for me to separate them, because self is conceptual and it's based on experiences and memories and blah blah blah. So when I see their self getting shaken and getting tested, the last thing they want to do is look like a fool. I mean, we know, being skeptics and being part of the skeptical community, I talk to Helen and Kelley a lot, and we argue with each other daily. I mean, and that's okay. Well, Jason, I don't think you were right about that. I mean, it's just how it is. Helen, Helen called me out on here one time. I'm like, oh, I did say something sexist, shit, but it's, I don't know, man. I think it's really bad when you're in a constant echo chamber, and everybody, like you brought up Copeland. That's the first name that came up to me, is, oh, Copeland, look at this. And I live down the street from Joel Osteen. So not down the street from his house, down the street from his compound. And it's the same deal. You have all these people sharing the same fucking narrative, and they kind of have to support each other. Like in a bar room, you let them lie about the fish, so that way you can lie about how long it is, and you can lie about how long you went, and you lie about how much you drank. Everybody knows we're lying, but if anybody gets called out, we all get called out. So we're all going to double down. Helen, how do you feel about that?
Well, I wanted to go back to something that Kelley said that prompted a thing in my brain, where I don't know why they just say, like, I got this new message from God, and God said that, I was wrong about this person, and now, he needs to be condemned because he did the bad things. Or she did the bad things, but no, it's the doubling down. It's like, well, the ship is sinking, but I'm going down with the ship, and I'm like, well, kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because there are a lot of people that once the rose-colored glasses come off, they will jump ship. They will go in the lifeboat, and they might follow somebody else, but they can see the writing on the wall. They can see the ship is sinking. And the fact that they're still riding the grift, the fact that they are still trying to make it out that, like, people that do these certain things, like, the former president, he is a criminal. And it's just, and they keep pretending he's not.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Yes, allegedly. I will correct myself.
Allegedly.
Yes, allegedly a criminal.
Well,
I'm not saying, like, I want these people, like, I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. If you do something wrong, allegedly, you should be treated like any other citizen. So, and I think that's a little bit where the frustration comes from. It's just that I wish that they could make up a lie like they usually do and blame it on their God, instead of trying to keep riding a sinking ship. I just don't see the point anymore. What do you think, Kelley?
I think all kinds of crazy stuff. What a crazy moment in history this is to me. And I always talk about being old and stuff, and I've been around a while. This has got to be one of the craziest presidential things that I can remember happening. The next thing probably would have been the Clinton impeachment to this. One other president was arrested when he was in office. I don't know if you guys know about that. It was nothing this egregious, But Grant was arrested for speeding in Washington, D.C. because he used to like to race his horse carriage around town with his friends. He had actually been warned the day before by the very same constable. And he was duly arrested and taken to the police station the second time. And to his credit, Grant went willingly. He even insisted that the policeman arrest him. And Nixon was indicted, but was fully pardoned by Ford. And Clinton had a sexual harassment civil case against him that was settled out of court. So presidents have had legal actions taken against them while in office or after being in office, but nothing like this, no criminal charges. So it's an interesting point in history, and I'm kind of glad I'm getting to see it because, like I said, it's not something that's happening. And I have to wonder if it's a good or bad thing. Are we setting any precedents by doing this? Is this going to make us, like the last couple of presidents we've had have been involved in different things? I'm thinking weapons or Iran-Contra, the missing weapons of mass destruction, torture memos for terrorists, drone strikes, right? This is all things that these presidents did that they really shouldn't have been doing and should have been had their feet held to the fire, and they weren't. So I'm hoping that this might start a new trend that these presidents are not going to get away with these things anymore, that we're actually going to do something about it. I'm hoping. I want to see more accountability, and hopefully this will be the change that we're looking for in that respect. So I'm keeping it up. And I also wonder if this is a scratch in the Teflon Don's coating. Is this going to be, is this going to make it so there's going to be more serious charges following up? What do you guys think about that?
Well, there's certainly going to be. This is the least serious of all the things he's being investigated for. There's charges related to January 6th that are still being looked at. There's if this is the lowest level of trouble he's potentially in, and it was 34 felony counts, and it only gets worse from here.
You're right.
So I'll be very interested to see how it goes. I'm also interested to see how it actually affects his chances moving forward in the ballot box, because while I use Franklin Graham being a great example, it's certainly it's kind of baked in that he's got these issues. He's a flawed candidate, but people know that, right? But the people who are already going to support him, they were going to do it anyway. But while that so maybe it won't hurt him in a primary, but will it hurt him in the general election? It'll be very interesting. And I honestly, my guess is that it would hurt him in the general, and the Republican Party, if I were running the party, I would backpedal quickly and pivot to somebody else. But what do I know?
Well, I mean, they have their eyes on DeSantis, so and that's worrisome too. But that's a different conversation we can have. But it is interesting though that they are trying to fix. They have this square orange-haired orange paste peg going into a round hole, and they're trying to make it fit. And it's just like it's not going to fit. And I know that you're trying to create these narratives, but after a while, you just have to admit that it's not going to be healthy. But I am interested to see if that is going to set a precedent, because that'd be great. Because there has been, no matter who, there's been plenty of people that had power that did some horrible things and never, like war crimes, and never went to justice for it. And I think that, I would like to see where this is going to be in maybe another 4 years. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, because we have, you always have the whole he could become a martyr type thing. But I like what Jordan was bringing up. Pretty much what Kelley alluded to as well. Is this the first chink in the armor? Right. And y'all, the one thing I wanted to kind of close this out with is commenting again, like, well, the Christians who said, God told me this and blah, blah, blah. Well, the Christians have a safeguard. They have I'm a fallible human and I heard wrong. Right. And then they're able to be humble and then get glorified for look, I messed up. Look, even I'm a human and I mess up. And you know what else they have? They have the backslidden thing. Oh, he backslid from God. He didn't do what God wanted. This is God's way of letting us know that it's time for us to move on to the new appointed leader of the free fucking world. So, we have those pre-programmed in safeguards in especially the monotheistic religions, especially in Christianity, you know? So I think the Christians and people like Franklin Graham, as usual, will come out of this shit fucking spotless and fly away on their private jets and go get their pockets lined by some other asshole. So that's how I feel about that. Trump, it's going to be really interesting, and I agree with Kelley. It's a highly interesting thing, and I really don't think that the states are going to get as polarized as Trump would hope, and I think that's going to be the first indication that presidents can get touched, and they're not untouchable. You know, so that's how I feel about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, as interesting as this topic is, and I honestly could spend the whole show talking about it. We're gonna move on. But before we do, I want to thank all of our veteran and new viewers for getting us over 12K subscribers. So if you're watching us now and you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Get on that. Just do it. It's really easy. All you got to do is click the button. And then once you've subscribed, like and ring that bell so you'll always know when a new episode of the Nonprofits premieres. But it is every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central. I hope you already knew that. I hope that's why you're watching it right now. That's when you're watching it right now. And then share the link to our channel with all your friends, your family members, coworkers, that neighbor guy that you don't really like, the woman that's always yelling at people at the grocery store to get out of her way. Everybody, just with everybody. And then we can get the word out there and start helping with the fundraisers. And were you aware that the Atheist Community of Austin has another YouTube channel? Another one. Yes, they do. You should be aware of it. Check out the Atheist Experience Network, a channel where you can find all the ACA shows in podcast form. Subscribe at tiny.cc/AEN podcast to listen to episodes of the Nonprofits, Atheist Experience, and all the other ACA shows so you don't miss a single episode. And now we are going to take a trip over to the Supreme Court, and Jason's going to take us there. So, Jason,
okay, cool. Thank you. So we were arguing about, pleasantly debating, as skeptics do, about how to pronounce this. This was on Reuters, and the author of it is John Kruzel, and it was March 20th, 2023. And the name of the article is U.S. Supreme Court rejects a Christian preacher's challenge to university. Now, starting from the beginning, the Supreme Court on Monday declined to hear a traveling Christian evangelist's free speech challenge to a University of Alabama requirement that he obtain a permit before handing out religious pamphlets and preaching from a sidewalk adjacent to its campus. The justices turn away an appeal by preacher Rodney Keister of lower court's ruling, rejecting his claim that the university's permit requirement violated free speech rights under the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. Keister, founder of a Pennsylvania-based group called Evangelism Mission, regularly visits U.S. university campuses in hopes of spreading his Christian message to students, according to court filings. Now, I've got a lot of feelers about this. And we were talking about this before we got on air, and I'd really like to hear what Kelley has to say about it. I'm sorry. Yeah, actually, you know what? Actually, Jordan, what would you like to say about this? I apologize. We were sorry.
Warm it up. No problem.
Yeah.
So I could see arguments on either side as to whether or not this is the way things should be, but with the atmosphere the way things are, I'm always floored when the Supreme Court does anything consistent with past rulings. And so the fact that this Supreme Court declined to make an exception in favor of a Christian preacher is a small ray of sunshine to me. Whether or not this is the way things ought to be, they're treating this person the exact same way they would treat any other person in a similar circumstance. And that's a good thing. Because just because you happen to be part of the moral majority doesn't mean that you should be given special treatment, right? Should be applied equally to everybody. But I happen to know that Kelley doesn't necessarily agree with the with the thing. So so Kelley, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I'll go ahead and jump in. I think it was the correct decision on the court, and I'm not saying that because of my own religious beliefs. I'm saying it based on earlier decisions made by the court, including during the George W. Bush administration, when they ruled that it was all right to set up free speech zones and require permits to stage an anti-war rally. I don't see any difference in that particular circumstance and this current one with the preacher. I don't agree with that ruling made back then during the Bush administration. I think it's completely wrong. But I'm glad to see that the court was at least consistent when they ruled that on this, just like you said, Jordan, because they have seemed like they've been siding with religious views lately. And it was good to see that they weren't doing it in this position, in this case, just because it was a religious person. It shows you that the majority Catholic, the Catholic majority on the SCOTUS isn't favoring a plaintiff just because of their religious views. Sorry, having a hard time getting the words out now. Helen, you want to take it for me while I get my shit together?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. That's why I'm here. So I'm kind of in the same boat as everybody, that I'm happy with the consistency, because I've had a lot of feelings about the Supreme Court, especially over this past year. So I like to see some consistency, but I'm a little bit I'm kind of a little bit on the fence, because to a certain degree, yes, universities are public, but like, you need a parking permit to park on campus. You have to show that you have to have a student ID. You have to show that you belong on campus. And usually anyone that wants to use campus space has to have permission by the school to use it. Now, if he was like outside, on the sidewalk, that's fine, but he was doing it on the space, and the school said, you can come and dock here. That's not the issue. You just have to get a permit, because we can show that you belong on the campus. And that, I'm kind of like, well, that kind of makes sense to me. And he lost in the lower courts. That was why, when he's already brought this to lower courts in a few states, and the Supreme Court was like, well, they ruled that no, you had to follow the same rules that everybody else does, and we're not going to hear the case. And I was like, great. I'm like, and that's kind of my feeling on it, because I obviously don't want any, even if I disagree with someone, even if I think you're a butthead or a jerk face, I still think you should be allowed to say it. But at the same time, I'm like, these are the rules. These are the rules. And you got to follow the rules, man.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So what do you think? Like, that's kind of my opinion, but like, I know, Jason, you have a little bit more to say about this. So,
I mean, it's, again, being an atheist and very much an anti-theist towards a lot of religion. I love to hear whenever, ideologies are not allowed to be promoted on school grounds. But I mean, I feel that way pretty much about anything, like a school is a place of education. It's not you're not to be promoting things, right? So this afternoon, I actually contacted the Texas School Board concerning religious flyers that were posted up at my daughter's public elementary school. It was posted up on the reception area on the inside, like somebody had posted it up in there that worked there, and it was a flyer for Vacation Bible School. I was looking at it whenever I was preparing for this, and I wrote it out. It said, calling all kinder through fifth graders called together to serve God. Along with the posted flyer in the front of the school, there was a stack of flyers at the sign-in table. When I saw this, I told the receptionist with a quickness that a public school was not allowed to endorse religious activities. And she said, oh, so she grabbed it and took it all down real quick, and included the one that was on the wall. I then sent an email to the Texas School Board, and then sent another one to the vice principal of the school, as well as the person who was in charge of the Vacation Bible School. And I posted the law and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's been about 48 hours now, or no, 24 hours now, because or less than that. It's not even been a full day. And I mean, I still haven't gotten a response back, and I don't know if I will, but I'm going to keep pressing it starting next week. The thing is that much like I don't support that being posted up there, I also don't support, and this may be spicy, I don't think there should be a pro anything type rally in public schools that is endorsed by the school. You can have organizations who get permits through the school at the school. You can have the Queer Alliance. You can have the Christian White People Alliance. You can have any alliance you want as long as it's okay and you have your space and you get all the required permits. As much as I don't want that posted at my daughter's school, I don't want any other exclusionary stuff that would make people feel exclusionary. There doesn't need to be happy atheist, atheism is the way to go there. I mean, if they're able to post that, now I'm a member of the Satanic Temple, so I should be able to, post brunch with Satan, right? And that wouldn't be allowed there, right? I mean, it's a double standard, but it's also, it would have been, for one, it's a double standard, but what we're trying to do, we're trying to protect kids from indoctrination from all forms. You can have a religion class and educate. These are the religions that people believe. You can have a class that talks about social movements. This is the BLM movement. This is Proud Boys. This is Antifa. But you don't endorse those things in a public school, and especially in a college where you have like heightened emotional. It's just it's intense college age. You have a lot of feelings, and you have accessibility, and you can drive, and you can buy a vehicle, and you can go to bars. You're a full functioning young adult. Stuff can happen there that's more impactful on the social scheme than at my daughter's public elementary school. So when you have an evangelist there spreading propaganda and passing out pamphlets, and the school isn't doing anything about it, the school more or less via their silence are endorsing it. So I think I support this decision. I'm learning more about law every day, but I mean, Kelley and I talk about law a lot. So I'm really interested in, kind of where he disagrees maybe, or
you know what? I'm going to try to get the final word, and I'm going to let Jordan take it at this point.
Oh, okay, cool.
I do have something I want to leave us on at the end.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry. I'm fishing for you. I'm trying to get it.
You're good.
Well, I think that the most important thing is that the rules are applied equally and no group is given favored status, particularly groups of the majority. And so if the Vacation Bible School can put out their sign-in sheet, then the Satanic Temple should be able to put in their sign-in sheet, and everybody else should be able to put in their sign-in sheet. And it's a lot simpler if just nobody does it, because it's easier. But at the same time, I don't want to get in a space where we can't celebrate our diversity and share our culture and beliefs with each other. I think that's healthy. And so there's a bit of a balancing act between the school endorsing it and the school encouraging people to mingle and share and exchange beliefs and ideas. I think part of it has to do with, I'm going to almost contradict myself and talk about everybody being treated equally, but there is a power dynamic element to it, where if you are the dominant group, then you being given a stage can have a different context and different connotation than a group that's marginalized being given that same stage. Those aren't, even though they're equivalent acts, they don't have equivalent impact. And so that's another consideration, which might be difficult to legislate, but it's something I think we all can intuitively feel. And so I honestly wouldn't have a problem with my school having an Easter celebration, but they also have a Diwali celebration. They have a Hanukkah celebration. That's fine, as long as it's like, the point is like, here, let me tell you something cool about my beliefs, not here, let me tell you why you should believe as I do. That's, I think, the different tone.
Yeah. Well said.
No, I fully agree, man. I do.
Helen, do you have anything else you'd like to say on the topic?
I guess it's a little hard for me because, obviously, I want an expression of free speech in any setting, but again, I'm like, you got to follow the rules. And also too, what Jordan and Jason were saying about in any sort of school, like, why are we promoting religion in a public, in a place that, not an educational side, but like, you should join this group, and you can do it after school. Like, you can have Christian, you have Christian Bible studies that happen school after school. The students put it together. They do student alliances all the time. That's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. But again, I'm like, if you're in a place where you're supposed to be going to class and you're getting, somebody's on a megaphone telling you how, you're not doing the thing that you're, not right with God, I don't want to go through that. I'm like, I have to get to my A&P class.
Mhm.
Don't really want to talk to you, man. And I think, and also too, it like if I went there and started preaching atheism on a megaphone, I bet I would
Yeah.
get some looks.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm just
Hey,
saying.
If you're
I
taking
mean,
A&P, you don't have time to think about anything else. for the most
exactly. I
part.
did take it, and it is.
Oh
it
yeah.
is
It's rough.
it's
I've
a
been there.
rough class.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I've definitely been there.
I know you want to get your final word in, Kelley. So please go ahead.
All right. Well, I you know what? I don't want to say I'll get the final word. I let everybody else respond because you might have a big disagreement with me, so I'll let you all have a chance. One of the things I wanted to mention is back in the 80s when I was in college, I seen an evangelical on campus that was not treated as fairly as this guy was. I mean, he thought that he was treated badly. I watched a bunch of male students walk up to this guy and pick him up and bring him over to a creek that ran through the campus and give him a baptism in it. So,
Oh,
I mean,
geez.
it could have been a lot worse for this guy. I'm
Yeah.
just mentioning it. But as I said, the real scandal to me on this story is that I am positive SCOTUS got this wrong. I don't agree with the ruling that okayed free speech zones. I don't think that anyone should be able to be anywhere on public, or I think people should be able to be anywhere on public land and speak their mind on any subject without anything stopping them or being in the way of them having that free speech. I know a lot of you guys disagree with me on that. I don't think this preacher or anyone else should have to get a permit. I don't think this preacher or anyone else should have to be in a specific place on public property. The Supreme Court is supposed to be a majority of originalists, right? And I am pretty damn sure that our founding fathers originally meant for free speech to be unfettered, fully unfettered. I might not agree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it. You guys got any kickback to me on that one?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm just gonna go on my this is like I've been those of us that go to college, like we have to prove that we belong there, and
yeah.
that's kind of my feeling on it. Like you have to like applying for the permit and saying yes, you can speak here. It just shows that you belong on campus. That's all it is. I'm not in any way restricting anybody's speech, but you have to follow the same rules that I, as a student or a faculty staff, also has to follow.
Who
That's
belongs?
my
What do
kind
you
of
mean by belong on campus, though? If it's a public university, then any citizen is welcome to go to the library on the campus. Now, do they have to prove that they have a right to go to the library? You see what I mean? You're getting into territory that's really weird in the legal stance, right?
Well, okay, so my daughter's at a public school, and I have to
Sorry.
check in. I have to check in my ID, even though they know me and have known me there. And my house that I still own is 10 houses down from the school. I can see it. I still have to give them my ID every time I come in, and they have to recognize that I'm allowed to be there. It's a public school. So whenever I saw that stuff being promoted by somebody at the school posted up, it's much like a friend of ours who, when he was going to the VA, he saw that there was Christian stuff that was posted in somebody's cubicle and said, "Hey, my tax dollars don't pay for you to promote your religion. You know, I'm here to get services." And they made that person take that stuff down. So the way I see is this: if you can show that you're going to, I feel like free speech doesn't mean say whatever you want, because there's inciting riots, there's calling for violence. And when I see somebody, especially promoting Christianity, and I know the church, and I know that they're anti-queer, I know that they're anti-trans, I know that they're bigoted and blah, blah, blah. And my daughter who goes there, who is a lesbian, who is an open atheist, and she said I could talk about this on here, they speak against my daughter's well-being. So as far as I'm concerned, what they promote is hate speech, and I don't want it promoted by this public school that she goes to. I don't know as much as you do maybe about public universities and the law surrounding that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with going through just very basic, small little things to be like, I've earned the right to be in this area. It's like I can go to a public park or I can go to a school if or around children if I haven't like done bad crimes to kids in the past, right? I've earned the right to hang out around people because I haven't relinquished my rights in that sense. You know, you don't make the rules, but you play the game. And I think what's really gross about this person is that he thinks he needs some kind of special exception to go out there and endorse a religion that is hateful and that spreads hate and anti-scientific rhetoric. I mean, I don't know. It's really exhausting to deal with these people. And I don't know. They didn't pay their dues. It's a public university, but you got to pay. You got to pay to go there. I don't know, Jordan. How do you feel about this, man?
Well, on the one hand, I'm empathetic to Kelley's stance that people should be able to speak their minds on basically any topic, except for Nazis. They're an exception to every rule in my book.
So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll give you. There are some exceptions.
So,
I mean,
but
you know,
I'm inclined to to favor free speech wherever possible. However, one wrinkle in that is if somebody is speaking on a street corner or like in a park, I can choose to not go through that park if I don't want to hear what they have to say. Like they are free to speak it. I am not mandated to listen to it, right? Where you could run into problems, it's more of a problem perhaps in an elementary school, but even on a university, if that guy's standing outside the only entrance to the building I need to go in, I don't have a choice. I'm basically being required to listen to this speech that may be hurtful to me. Now so maybe there's an argument to be made for the location of speech because it could kind of de facto be inflicting your opinion on other people who you don't have the right to inflict your opinion. You have the right to say it. You don't have a right to require that other people listen, right? And you might run into some issues there. So I don't know. I think there might be a balance to be struck, but I also wouldn't want it to become a situation where the rules become so onerous that for practical purposes, you don't have the freedom, right?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well said, everyone. I appreciate everybody's comments on that one. It's an interesting story. And again, like I said, I'm glad that the SCOTUS was at least consistent in their rulings. So, all right. I guess we'll move on to the next one. But before we do, if you, yes, you, I'm talking to you eating the sandwich. If you can be in the Austin area on Sunday, April 30th, you should consider joining us in the studio audience at the ACA Free Thought Library for live broadcasts of Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience. I went in January and it was a lot of fun. I had so much fun. Doors open at noon on Sunday. Parking is wherever you can find a legal spot. It is a pretty small lot, so if you want to have a parking spot that you don't have to walk a block or two, you better get there early. And if you can't make it there this month, we will continue to broadcast live from the studio at the last week of every month. So keep watching this show and our website at atheist-community.org for news and information as we expand more live offerings in the future. And our next story, we're going to talk about somebody wanting to get rid of the Bible from Davis County school libraries in Utah. Helen, you want to take us there?
Absolutely. So this article comes from Amy Donaldson from KSL.com. And the Davis County School District in Utah has gotten on the book banning train, toot. Though the people who bring the complaints remain anonymous. So I want to make that the people that make the complaints about the books can just submit them to the school board, but they don't have to give any identifying information. They can just say, like, point out why a book they feel is problematic, and the school board will review it. But some wise person that has still remained anonymous issued a complaint to the school's district about the Bible under the bill's HB 374, which restricts books which may have sensitive material in its contents. Now, I don't know about you all, but I think incest, mass genocide, condone rape, child bride, child pregnancies, all kinds of bad things, torture, blood sacrifice would count as sensitive material. But quoting Ms. Donaldson from the article, HB 374, sponsored by Representative Ken Ivory of the West Jordan District, defines sensitive material as instructional materials that are pornographic or indecent. colloquially referred to as the bright line rule in the state code. Ivory said the challenge of the Bible is a backhanded slap to parents that's simply trying to have a healthy learning environment for all the students in the schools. I have every confidence that no school district is going to consider Bible as violating 76-10227, which addresses descriptions and depictions of illicit sex or sexual immorality. Well, aren't we picking and choosing? I tend to think that any legitimate complaints coming in from any holy book will not be considered with the same scrutiny compared to, I don't know, to Kelley Mockingbird, which was like standard reading when I was growing up, and I'm sure when this panel was growing up as well, that was standard school approved curriculum, and it was a big conversation that we had when I was in school. So I know that I'm a part of a well-educated, smart, and skeptical panel. So I would like to hand it over to Jordan, because I'm sure he has opinions about this.
Yeah, so I think this just boils down to hypocrisy, right? The law was passed in order to restrict sensitive materials, but Ken Ivory is extremely offended that the book he likes might get caught up in the rule that he made, as opposed to books he doesn't like. Now, so far as I know, no other religious texts have been challenged, but if the Quran had been challenged, I have every confidence that Ken Ivory would either be silent or applauding it. Now, I'm with you. I don't think the Bible is going to be removed. I don't think, but what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. If you're going to make a rule like this, then it should be applied equally to everyone. Now, I don't think the Bible should be removed. I think that children should have access to religious texts, just like they should have access to any other thing that is historically valuable, because being instructed in the religions of the world is a part of, as a historical or sociological phenomena, it's a perfectly valid part of an education. However, if you're going to make a rule where it can apply, then it should apply, right? And so what this shows is that this was never actually about keeping explicit material away from kids. This was about keeping things that runs contrary to Ken Ivory's beliefs away from kids. He doesn't actually care about explicit material, because if that was the case, he'd be fine with the Bible being removed. What he cares about is that they might see a book with gasp 2 dads on the cover, Yeah.
Or two gay penguins, because gay penguins,
right? Exactly, because we
are bad, apparently, even though it happens in nature.
We acknowledge that there are gay penguins in the world, then what is next?
Right, exactly. Because if you see 2 gay penguins, you're going to be gay. That's how it happens.
Yeah, it's like a disease that gets communicated through reading books. I don't know.
Oh,
anyway,
almost every gay person I have ever met told me that too. That they became gay after finding out that penguins were gay as well.
That's right.
And penguins were so cute, it just put them over the border. So
I can't blame them.
Yeah,
what do you got, Jason?
Well, I agree with you. To me, the idea of trying to ban the Bible, like, I understand why somebody would call and try to anonymously try to ban the Bible, and it's almost like, well, yeah, see, I'm going to get you too. And I understand the Bible. I grew up reading the Bible. I read so much of it, and it's got terrible shit in there, and it's very graphic, and talk about getting swords getting lost in guys from being so big, and killing babies, and how to do an abortion, and blah blah blah. I mean, it's pretty mature shit. And then the end of Revelation is pretty intense. It's funny because, like, so my daughter, my partner, and I, we got a hotel in the beach in Galveston over the weekend. Kid just turned 11. And in our family, we have a really open line of communication. We talk about religion, sexuality, politics. My partner's a therapist. I'm finishing my degree in psychology. We talk about everything. Nothing's off limits. So we had been discussing religion in the hotel room, and I remembered there's Gideon Bibles in the nightstands. I was talking about this with my daughter, and she's like, I forget exactly what, but so I looked and there it was. So I stole it and, of course, gave it to my kid. And before we put it away, she's like, Dad, can you read some of it to me? I'm like, yeah, let me read you Revelations, And and I started reading about the 7th seal and blah, blah, blah. And she got bored, right? She found it ridiculous and just tedious. She's like, okay, whatever, I don't care. But it's funny because I remember being 11, 12 years old. And when a person read Revelation in our church, it would scare the fucking shit out of me. It was terrifying. I got chills, you know,
Mhm.
well, because we were convinced that the rapture was going to happen at any time, right? And the apocalypse was imminent. But my daughter, you know, she has never been and never will be indoctrinated by abusive ideologies like Christianity. So for her, it's just a book. I said all that to say it's just a book, and for her, it's a silly one at that. She's 11 years old. She's like, this is stupid,
Mhm.
right? She doesn't care. That said, I can understand not wanting the book in the library after all of these fucking people who have wrongly removed amazing pieces of literature. But that's not how justice works. You know, so it's like just because somebody did some bullshit doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to get you. I'm going to try to get the Bible banned. I think it's a petty thing. I I don't think it's petty. I think it's like they're trying to do the just dessert thing. But at the same time, I mean, if we're being skeptical and we want to be reasonable, the Bible needs to stay too. You know, so Kelley, how do you feel about this stuff, man?
Well, it reminds me of that old saying: "If you sow ice, you're going to harvest wind." Right?
I don't even know what that is.
I've
If
never
I was
heard
talking
that.
Yeah,
about,
and that is so old. I haven't heard.
It's
I
like
was talking on Discord the other day, and someone mentioned that if the Bible were written today and published today, it should probably have a trigger warning on the cover before it was
Mhm.
published. You know?
Right?
Oh, of course.
And that got me
Yeah.
to wondering if, in fact, if it was published today and it wasn't an ancient holy book, would these same people be against it now or not? You know, the same people who are trying to keep it in, that want to keep it in the library. Would they want to not put it in there if it was published just today? And you have to really seriously wonder about that. And I don't think we need to rehash any of the particular incidents of sexual behavior or horrible violence in the Bible. I'm sure all of us know several of them.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
do have to agree with the anonymous filer of this book challenge, if for no other reason that pointing out the absurdity of banning books based on someone's morality or feelings, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I was kind of happy to see this. I agree with Jordan; it's probably never going to go anywhere. But just to point out the absurdity of the whole idea is just kind of silly and ridiculous to me. Helen, do you have anything else you want to say about it?
Well, I'm kind of hoping too that maybe the people, because we know Christians don't read their Bible, because if they read their Bible, they become an atheist. If you start looking
Yeah.
at the deep shit that's in there.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that now it's like, hey, maybe you should look at this book, and it's now, in the county, and that is being challenged along with other pieces of literature, that they'll read their Bible and actually understand that there's some disturbing shit in their book. And if they can just read it and get more information on it, maybe that will help them, look at their faith and their beliefs with a little bit more scrutiny. Because it's not all love and rainbows and doves and, and great sacrificial love. There's some really dark things in there that people need to pay attention to. Like, do you agree, Jordan? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that most run-of-the-mill Christians are unaware of those things. It's just one of the things they don't like to dwell on usually, because they'd prefer to, sit in like Paul's epistles and things like that. But yeah, there's stuff in the Bible that wouldn't be appropriate for kids to read. There's a reason that when they do Bible study or Sunday school, they do the cartoon version of Noah's Ark, not the harsh reality of God drowning the entire world and things like that. But to Jason's point about submitting this being petty, I would agree. If my goal, if I was putting myself in the shoes of the person who put in the anonymous thing, if my goal was to actually get the Bible banned, then I wouldn't agree with that goal. But if I'm putting myself in their shoes, my goal is not actually to get the Bible banned, because I don't want it to be banned. My goal is to shine a light on the hypocrisy of the people doing this, because
Mhm.
it's showing that they want to enforce a standard on everybody else, but not on themselves, right? They want to hold
Mhm.
everybody else to the standard, but their stuff that they like should be special. And the right answer is no. Nobody gets to be special, right? You
For
have
sure.
to treat all of these things equivalently. Though I will say that if you wanted to pick a story out of the Bible to preserve, my favorite is Ehud, the left-handed judge, the Assassin's Creed story in the middle of the Bible. I think that's pretty neat. Okay. Anyway, Jason, what do you got?
Oh, you're muted, honey.
Muted.
Oh no, I'm sorry, y'all. There was
There we
some
go.
family noise going on, and I tried to keep it out of the headphones. I appreciate that, but you know,
pulling a Johnny P there.
Oh, I know, huh? I just want to be like Johnny P. Look, for one, you know, bringing up all the brutality and the Noah's flood thing. What I think is really interesting is that you have children with a little torture device around their neck on a chain with a dead guy nailed to it. So we've seen that so many times that you have like a literal tortured person. And, you know, you forget on those crosses, there's a little thing that goes up the rear end that they sit people down on. So you got that going on in there too. So you have brutality that has been so normalized that they don't even see it anymore. Right. So, and then especially with the church that I went to, I mean, that was God. Them's the breaks. Like, well, God's going to do what God's going to do. Right. We're not going to agree with it. So that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if something has been normalized for so long, they're not going to see it. They're not going to see what's in front of them. But at the same time, I'm going to have to think about this. I still do think it's like, okay, yeah, these are the rules, and look, haha, I got you with your own rules. It's like pointing out the hypocrisy, like y'all have been saying, but maybe I don't play the game well enough. For me, it just seems almost like stooping down to somebody else's level. Like Martin Luther King, how he would, you know, say violence is, you know, the last resort.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Versus, you know, how a lot of people, we see things change via violent revolutions. Right. If you want a quick change, yeah, do what the other people do. But for me, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I would much rather stick with my integrity. And even if they are doing shitty things, I don't want to play their game. And
Yep.
and I think, and I like, because I think I'd like to put myself in their shoes, like what Jordan was saying. But I'm also really uncomfortable about doing that because I don't know what their shoes are or what their intentions are. So I have to take it for the action that was done. And for me, I don't feel like banning any book at all outside of pornographic material that's not age appropriate. I don't feel like banning anything should happen. I feel like more books that are controversial should be added to the library, including religious things and things that deal with race and gender and blah, 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 and holy texts and all that stuff. So we might just have to agree to disagree. I think the person who did that, while possibly good intentioned, I can never know that, but I just don't agree with them complaining about that. Kelley, how do you feel about that, man?
Well, first off, you were talking about the torture device around their neck. And I sometimes lay awake at night wondering what everybody would be wearing around their neck if Jesus has been killed by a guillotine.
Just a big straight razor.
Just some,
maybe.
Yeah, right.
A severed head.
Here's a couple of centuries too early for that.
Just something I've laid awake at night wondering about. So. Just so you guys can all have tortured thoughts now in the middle of the night. I'm hoping that this will serve as a good example to legislators writing and submitting these culture war reactionary bills. Hopefully they'll be a little more careful when they're writing these things and maybe narrow the language down a little bit better. I hope not, but you would think that would teach them that. Is it just possible that without using bigoted language that they can't narrow it down to the particular books they want banned? That's what I really have to wonder. Is the GOP culture war based that way? I think we can all say it's based on bigotry, but if they had to define what they really wanted out of it, could they do it with the language that wasn't bigoted?
No,
I don't think they could.
No,
I don't really think they could. And I think we need to hold their feet to the fire on that. We need to make them keep defining exactly what they want to show the American public exactly what it is that they're doing here. I don't think that the GOP culture war is winning the middle of the country in elections. And that's really what's at the heart of a lot of these bills that they're going after. They're going after they're using these far right culture war ideas because they think it's going to attract voters. And in the last 3 elections, they're losing both elections because of it. 1/3 of the country will always vote Republican. 1/3 will always vote Democrat. But that middle third, they'll fluctuate either way. And they're looking at these kind of things, these absurd things like this, and they're running away from the Republican Party because of it. And I don't understand why the Republicans can't see it. I mean, they're pushing even more of it right now for the next election cycle. Just yesterday in Wisconsin, well, yesterday to the day we're filming, the Democrats won a big election in Wisconsin, and they were running with abortion as the main issue. So these culture wars are not winning elections for the Republicans, and I don't understand why they really think that this is a winning strategy. Do they really think that the moderate America wants these issues to be at the forefront of elections? I don't think so. I don't think that that's what we want, and I can't believe that they're not doing something about it and actually trying to come up with real solutions to America's problems, because that's what people want to hear. That's what will bring people out to the polls for you, not this kind of stuff. Helen, you want to get the last word in?
Sure. I'm like, I always say this, and I say this a lot, that we lived in the worst timeline. And it's because it's very frustrating to me that we're having another conversation about books being banned in the United States. Like this is the story we're covering. We're talking about it, and it's just very, very frustrating to me because there's bigger fish to fry. And I say this again, over and over again, like Kelley said, if they actually focused on jobs and healthcare and, you know, education and things people actually really care about, ending the wars, you know, having access to the things that you need, you know, helping with homelessness. I mean, I'm kind of at the point right now that I would rather focus on that than worrying about, you know, some guy that said like, well, we should ban the Bible too because you're and point out the double standard. I wish we were talking about some great healthcare bill that was passed, but nope, we're talking about books.
No, I agree.
It's just frustrating. That's all. I'm just a little bit aggravated at the whole thing. So anyway, yeah, I'm just. Do you want to get anybody want to get another minute or two in before we move on?
Well, Helen's state and my state are very similar. You know, so being in Texas. If anybody read what the Texas GOP released a little while back, you know, 30 some odd pages of homophobic, bigoted, just classist, ethnocentric shit. It was fucking atrocious. And it felt like a joke. Like when anybody who read through the mission statement of the Texas GOP, good old, it was so terrifying that it seemed like a Monty Python sketch. And I mean, it like blatantly homophobic language, blatantly bigoted language, blatantly misogynistic, anti-woman, anti-queer, anti anything that isn't heterosis norm, just the same narrative over and over. And I agree with Helen. The fact that we're still dealing with this stuff at the level at which we're dealing with it is it feels like an absurdist Kurt Vonnegut book. It doesn't feel real. Well, the movie, there's a lot of movies about this type of stuff, and it feels like a fake reality. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with it. Jordan, what about you? How do you deal with this stuff, man?
Well, I think what you're seeing is competing sort of motivators. So the people who win primaries are not necessarily the people who win elections. There's a failing of our political system. And so what you're seeing is a outgoing segment of power that's trying desperately to hold on to power. And the way that they are doing it is by appealing not to new voters, but by retaining the voters they have and entrenching them, right? That works really well when you're trying to preach to a primary crew, which are the people who already agree with you, right? Only the most hardest of hardcore people vote in primaries. And so you can get away with these kind of things. So on the one hand, the thing driving this is the fact that it sells to a large segment of the population, which is very concerning, right? However, as Kelley mentioned, I think that it is a little bit it gives me a little bit of hope that it doesn't appear to be working outside of that bubble. And so I think what we're seeing, what I hope maybe I'm just, too optimistic, but what I hope we're seeing is a sea change in the narrative in America. It's kind of like the it's always darkest before the dawn. You're getting this last gasp of this particular brand of bigotry,
I hope
and
so.
the system has been set up in such a way to keep them in power, but you can only, as a minority, hold power so long in a country that has any kind of semblance of democracy. So we just got to hold out with our tiny shred of democracy for a little bit longer. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great message of hope for the future. And with that, I am going to do a few more announcements. Did you know that you can become a member of this channel for as little as 99 cents a month? All you have to do is click the join button below the video, and that will give you access to special chat emojis. It's only 99 cents. I can't think of a better way to spend $1 every month. Also, we have merch. Yes, good merch too, believe it or not. You can visit tiny.cc/merch ACA to get your favorite items like t-shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs. I have a nice coffee mug myself. You can check our new items also, like beanies and phone cases and tote bags. And all ACA shows feature a special limited edition item each month. So be sure to check out our store for NP merchandise and merch from all the other fine ACA shows. And, have you ever been sitting around by yourself one afternoon and you thought to yourself, hey, I would really love the content the ACA creates, but I want to see it all the time. I really love it, want it all the time. Well, you know what? We got you covered. We really do. Check out our brand new 24/7 AXP live stream. You can tune in at any time of the day to experience a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from the over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. Watch or simply listen to your favorite hosts and discover some new hosts that maybe you never heard of from days past. So visit tiny.cc/AXPTV to join in the fun. And for our last segment, I am going to talk a little bit about fasting. We have a story here from the AP. It was done by Louis Andre Hinaud and MARIAM Pham, and it mentions that Ramadan is on us, and people are fasting. Also, people fast for Lent and other holy days. And exactly why is fasting such a big part of religious tradition? It's a pretty interesting article that goes into several different religions and their outlook on it. And I would like to see what Jason thinks about some of these ideas.
Well, okay. So again, I love psychology, and
I actually wrote in my notes for the very first time, I'm actually interested in what Jason has to say on this.
that's good. Finally. So what I do on my kind of brain breaks is I obsess over cults, and I love studying cults and I don't know. So what's really interesting is that across the board, one of the most effective things that cults do is restrict your diet. Diet control is huge. So you have Rock Therio from the Anthill Kids, to Shinrikyo, who did that gas attack in Japan, to Jim Jones, all the way to Hellbop folks, Heaven's Gate. The one thing that they had in common was severe diet restriction. It makes you docile. If you're not getting enough food and rest, your mind quickly becomes malleable. You become extremely impressionable. In situations where you deplete yourself of calories and you stay in close contact and with your insular group while becoming fully absorbed in that religious ritual, you can be easily led into believing that you are in communion with something spiritual or something greater than yourself that your group has somehow tapped into. And so what I've more or less learned is that fasting is a wonderful way of confirming your biases. The church I grew up in was super evangelical, laying on of hands, demons, things like that. So I remember fasting, and then while we would do group fasting, we would do all these 5-hour-long prayer, intercession, speaking in tongue services where everybody gets really wrapped up into this emotionality, and somebody of course gets a demon cast out, and somebody of course like prays the gay away again, and you do all these things that are just, but they're around this fasting. You're tired, and then of course you're dreaming about this stuff because that's all you're thinking about. You're in the middle of this ritual. It's like it reminds me of Golden Dawn. It was Golden Dawn. I think it's the Abrimelin ritual. It's like a 6-month ritual where you starve yourself and you do all this fasting and you do all these like sex magic stuff, and you're doing a bunch of, it's just wild. So I really, anytime I see fasting, I see it as a way to just allow for somebody else to tell you what to do, and you give away your own whatever. You let people, you more or less sell your identity and your desires and your motivations to this fucking grift. I don't know, Helen, how do you feel about this?
Well, I also like so this got me interested. So I went to the Britannica.com and I decided to look up some interesting stuff about fasting. And there's a bunch of stuff in there from people for health reasons they might fast, all like you mentioned, Jason, to like the mystical. So, and I, as someone that was a Catholic and then a pagan, and there wasn't a whole lot of fasting going on though in the modern times in the religions that I was involved in. Obviously at Lent, you're encouraged to give things up, but not to the point where it'd be detrimental to your health. Like the Catholic Church is imposing fasting onto people. You might you might like a favorite food that you really like, you might give up for Lent, but it's not encouraged to do anything that would be detrimental. And then, this got me thinking that maybe in the past, when there was a famine, maybe there was a shortage on food, that priests and people that were like the mystical and religious leaders of a community got together with leaders, and the leaders was like, maybe we should tell the people that they will have more spiritual enlightenment if they don't eat.
Yeah.
It just seems like a solution. You have a problem and here's a practical made up solution for it. And we do this now. So it didn't see that far of a leap for me. That was kind of where my brain went. Because like you can, God likes it when you don't eat. He likes that. So Kelley, that was where my brain went. Where does your brain go, Kelley?
I'm still. You don't want to know.
Okay.
When I first started,
that's a totally different conversation.
Yeah, you really
show.
don't. Yeah, we could do like 5 or 6 shows on that.
That's in the ACD later.
Yeah,
there you go. Meet me in the ACD. We'll talk. I was reading this, and I started thinking about Lent, and my first thought was, hey, I'm going to give up candy for Lent so I can fully understand how much Jesus suffered for 40 days when he was fasting in the desert.
What the fuck?
I know, seriously, right? At least Muslims feign fasting for their ideas, right? I never really understood why they called it like the fast of Ramadan, because it's really just a bunch of little tiny fasts all strung together, isn't it? Right? And
yeah.
I think they should call it the fasts of Ramadan. I often go without eating during the day because I'm just moving too fast to work and I just forget. I get home after the sun goes down and I have a nice meal, and I don't consider that fasting. I just consider that having one less meal that day. I just don't get it, But I'm sorry, I kind of just made myself laugh too much.
Well, God's glad that you fasted for him and you didn't realize you were doing it. But he's still happy anyway because
Jordan, you got a few things you want to say?
Yeah, so I think I might be in the minority of atheists in that I think that one of the biggest shortfalls of the secular community, the atheist community as a whole, is our lack of ritual. I think it's one of the biggest things that we lose when we leave a religious tradition, because rituals, these traditions, when utilized well, they're a really great way to foster a sense of community, of belonging, of connection to the people around you and to the past. It can help encourage self-reflection and sort of centering and those sorts of things. So like when done well, I think it's an extremely effective tool. For example, the fasting of Ramadan is supposed to be, when it's done right, coupled with celebrations of the family. So you
Mhm.
don't eat during the day, but then in the evening, it's a community event, right? And it's also the part of the purpose of it is to foster compassion and empathy for the poor, people who don't have what you have, right? And that's great. And they're supposed to be coupling this with donations to the needy, kind of playing off of this newfound empathy that they're supposed to have. So this is a way where ritual can be harnessed for good, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. All of the people in my family learned how to make bread from my grandmother, and so when the bread rises, I draw a cross in the bread. I don't think the cross actually does anything, but it's a way to connect to the people who came before me, right? Where it can go off the rails is when it's used to harm, right? And
Mhm.
so when it comes to Ramadan, there's exclusions for people who have dietary needs, or where it would be harmful to them, right? To quote a little-known Jewish rabbi from the first century, he said, "Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So man is Lord of the Sabbath." The Sabbath is a ritual, but the point of the ritual is to help humans. And so as long as the focus is kept on helping people, and like that's the purpose of this ritual, then I think rituals are great. You know, where it becomes a problem is when you get into cult territory where the ritual is used to harm. So
Yeah.
like
No.
most things, it's not necessary. I don't think the ritual is moral or immoral in and of itself. It's how it's used. But what do you think, Jason?
No. No. I agree. I mean, it's. I definitely have rituals. We have our I play in bands, and we have specific days that we practice, and we do specific things and stuff like that. We have a calendar in our house, and my partner is real big on ritual and knowing what we're going to do and planning on doing very specific things with the family and do things like that. So I do agree. Ritual is huge. I get really worried whenever you have an insular ritual and then you start thinking people are getting some type of like special knowledge, or you start getting, I don't know, the insular nature of ritual to me is it can I've seen it'd be really dangerous and affect people in a real negative way. I've been doing the cage fighting thing for a while and training and stuff. So whenever there's a way, like everybody kind of clap hands and starts and you do this thing, and everybody knows there's a ritual behind jujitsu. If I do jujitsu with somebody from across the world, we're gonna walk up and go bah, bah, and it's just there's a thing that everybody does. That's a ritualistic thing. We all know. There's little jokes and heuristics that everybody understands, and so that's good. So it does build that community. But that's the thing that is also scary to me when it comes to religion, is that kind of like what we talked with the first segment, it's an automatic in, and you're automatically in the group and you're automatically accepted, no questions asked. And like, I think that's where a lot of atheists and skeptics and people who are deconverting or deconstructing religion, that's where they get really nervous about grouping up, becoming part of rituals and things like that, and group rituals, and because they've seen the harm, because you can really slide into that and let go of yourself, whatever, and abandon your own skepticism and just say, well, this is what we do. And that's the thing that I think is really interesting. And Helen, I'll throw it to you next. But I think you were part of paganism. I was part of religious stuff. We've all experienced that. When you start talking like we, anybody like that, whether it's a religious group, an ideological group, a political group, my gym, us, this is how we train. This is now our band. This is just, this is how we play. When you start sacrificing that to me gets really scary. And maybe that's because I'm an individualist and I grew up not in a collectivistic culture, but the sacrifice of myself to the whims of the group ritual, it seems to be a very easy thing for humans to do and a very natural thing for humans to do. But at the same time, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's always helpful. I don't know, Helen, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, like I was a leader in the pagan community, and I had a group that I led and taught them, but we would also encourage them to do things on their own, to find their own individuality within our faith. We
Mhm.
didn't we definitely had rituals and holidays that we celebrated and beliefs that we had, but we'd also encourage people to find their own way, because paganism is a very individualistic religion if you want it to be, and that was one of the things that I took away from it. That's why it was easy for me to transfer to atheism, because I was like, oh, I'm just letting go of the the make-believe stuff, and I still participate in rituals. I still like celebrating the Sabbaths, because to me, I am nature, and it connects me with the natural world. I just let go of all the make-believe and the things that I can't prove. And I have no problem with the ritual whatsoever, but we've all been saying, if it's causing harm, then, or you're losing yourself to an ideology or an idea. We hear over and over again, like people that follow influencers and get cheated out of money because they think that this person has all the answers, and they turn off their brain, and they don't start to question even what some Yahoo and the internet is selling them. So it gets, what's the word I'm looking for? It gets a little sticky if you're not in any ideology, because we are tribal, we're social. You have to take a step back and going, okay, am I doing this because I am enjoying it, or am I doing and it makes me happy, or am I doing it because it's been conditioned into me? And I've lost my individuality and my connection to it. So what do you think, Jordan, on that thought?
Yeah. So an example of that sort of thing, of ritual being used to harm, I think happened to my brother-in-law when half the family is Protestant, half the family is Catholic, and they had a Catholic wedding. And at this wedding, the celebration of the union of these two families, they had a mass, and the preacher said, if you're not part of this Catholic church, you can stay in that seat. And that didn't feel great to the people who weren't allowed to participate, and they were Christian, right? And I gotta wonder, like, do you honestly think that's what Jesus wanted? Like, was that really the goal of this ritual? Like the guy who got criticized for dining with prostitutes and tax collectors, say whatever else you wanted to about the guy, but he was kind of big on this whole love thing, right? So I don't know. So that I think the problem, like you said, is not the ritual itself, but like many things that can happen that are harmful about religion but are not the exclusive domain of religion, is when you start getting into dogmatism and submitting yourself without any kind of scrutiny to the larger group. And that's where rituals, whether they're religious or not, can start having harmful effects, when no one is allowed to question, hey, do we have the right focus here? And so, like, coming back to the fasting thing, if you're fasting in order to to build empathy to people who don't have food, that's great. If you're fasting, but if it gets to the point where, well, I know you have diabetes, but you need to fast anyway because that's what God said, that's where the problem, right? And so ultimately, it's all about the harm that it does. Yeah. What do you think, Kelley?
This whole, you mentioning the whole thing about people needing rituals made me think about a little bit stuff. I go through a series of things every day when I open up my store, and I never really thought about it, but that's a ritual, and here I'm thinking, hell with rituals. We don't need that. That's why we gave up on religion. We don't need rituals anymore. But you're right. We do have rituals that we do follow every day. And it got me to really rethinking some of the way I spend my life every day. I was curious about some of the other things from reading this article there. And it was the idea, where was the idea of fasting as purification? Where'd that come from? And why does it spread over such a large area and last for so long? What was the original justification for it? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think instead of thinking about what the holy symbol would look like if it had been a guillotine, I'm going to be thinking about this at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, but I used to be a bit of a health nut when I was younger myself, and I used to fast one day a week, and I thought it was good for me, for my health. And I don't know if it was. I felt way better back then when I was doing that. I would also eat vegetarian 1 week a month. Again, just for my health. I don't know if it did anything. I do know, as I said, I felt a lot better, but that was 35, 40 years ago. So I think that might have something to do with it.
You were younger too. So,
exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. So we are starting to get close to the end of the episode here. I'm going to do some final announcements, and we'll come back and let everybody have a last word. So But if you are listening to us and you really like the conversation we're having, and you want to continue to have conversations like this, be involved in them yourself, you should join our fan social media outlets. You can find most of the nonprofit hosts. Many of them are on the Atheist Community of Discord. Jason, Helen, and I are there all the time. And you can find us by going to tiny.cc/ACD Discord. And you can also find us on Facebook at tiny.cc/FBNP. And if you'd like to support the show, we really appreciate it if you did. And you can do so by becoming a patron at tiny.cc/PatreonNP. Also, we value your feedback. We really, really, really do. I read all the comments. Tell us what you like, what you don't like in those comments, or you can email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. I promise if you say something in the comments, I will respond to it. I promise you. So call me out on it. Also, visit the Atheist Community of Austin's official website at atheist-community.org for the latest of what's been happening, and feel free to contact the ACA at large by emailing tv@atheist-community.org. So with all of that said, all those hyphens and .orgs put away, Jason, you want to give us a final word for the day?
Put me on the spot right there. I was waiting to be at the end.
I can come back to you.
No. I'm joking, man. For one, I just appreciate all y'all being here and having this conversation, with me. And I think it's interesting how you can get people with differing views, but still have a common goal, and it's humanism. And I think it's really important that, we all four of us had differing views about multiple different things here today. But we still view ourselves as part of the community. And I think outside of just overt bigotry and just all the terrible shit, the atheist community is somewhere where you can be skeptical and question each other and argue with each other, but at the same time still be community. And there's no like, if you're not Catholic or Protestant or stand up or evangelical or this, that, or the other, you're out. I'd say one thing I like about the community is that there's no automatic in either. You're not automatically just like, yeah, you're here. It's cool. Unquestioning. It's like people are going to talk to you and people are going to question you. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate being held accountable, y'all.
Cool.
So
Thanks,
thank
Jason.
you.
Helen?
So I'm glad that compared to the other articles we've done on this show, this was a little bit of a lighter week, like I really appreciate that. I didn't, feel the usual panic I usually do when I read articles. So that was really nice. I'm really grateful that we had like a really engaging conversation with differing opinions. That's why we like to do this show. And that we're also all supportive to each other and each other's opinions, and I really appreciate that. So again, thank you for having me again.
Thanks for being here. And Jordan, I'd left the premier end spot for you. So,
well, I think that the most important thing for us all to take away is that no belief should be held dogmatically, that all beliefs should be open to be questioning. I'm an atheist, but I'm a skeptic first. If I found evidence for God, I'd stop being an atheist. I wouldn't stop being a skeptic. And so you shouldn't take any belief just because the group thinks it, but you also shouldn't reject any belief just because somebody else thinks it.
All right, cool. Love your tie too.
It is very pretty.
I know.
I like it too.
I had to say something before we finish the show. So I want to thank you all for coming. I had a great time today. I hope to see more of all three of you, Jordan especially. So because I don't see you around like these other two clowns all the time.
Oh God.
So I do want to thank
we're
everyone.
in your cult, Kelley.
God. I thought it was your cult, Helen.
Oh yeah, I am the prolific cult leader. I forgot.
Yes, you are.
So I want to thank everybody who are viewing us. Thank you for viewing us, and we will see you next week.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.